It's tough. It's really tough in Calaveras right now. There's a lot of families that were depending on this industry. There's a lot of people that have been put out of work. As a community, we're trying to chip in to help each other, but some people can only hold out for so long.
Soil to the Oil Media, this is the Cannabis Detector with your host and California cannabis industry expert, Kristen Yoder. Kristen, let's talk about this week's bullshit. What do you got?
I have got some crazy bullshit this week. And the first one is something I saw on LinkedIn, which is where I live, which I highly recommend anybody in the cannabis industry or interested in the cannabis industry gets on there because it's where the grown-ups hang out in the cannabis industry. But anyways, Richard Rose is amazing. He's a veteran, 24 years in the hemp industry, gangster. And I love his posts.
He's the godfather of bullshit detection?
He calls himself your canna coach, pioneer in the hemp industry for 24 years. Consult the consultant, your consultant consults. So shout out to Richard Rose. But anyways, he found a note from Sanjay Gupta, the CNN doctor. And it was from what Sanjay Gupta posted online. He said, "Hey there, I want to address a press release you may have recently seen from the Tree of Knowledge Corporation. It is about a distribution agreement they have entered into with a Dr. Sanjay Gupta for a line of cannabis-based products. But here's the thing, that Dr. Sanjay Gupta is not me. While we are both Indian and share the same name, we live in different states, practice different specialities, and look nothing alike. Despite that, there have now been several news articles connecting me to this agreement. So I want to go on the record and make it clear that I have no involvement with Tree of Knowledge Corporation or their products. The first I ever heard of them was on social media. I have never endorsed any products. Anything you have read to the contrary is simply not true." So this is like level 3 bullshit. Because this company was so smart because they put out a press release about this. And in the press release, they had one sentence that said, "Not to be confused with Dr. Sanjay Gupta from CNN." Just this one little sentence in this long press release where they know that people are going to mistake the Sanjay Guptas. I would have. I mean, no offense to Sanjay Gupta, but I don't know what he looks like. So I would have thought that was him. I mean, this guy, he is a doctor. His name is Sanjay Gupta, and it's appropriate that he is a pain doctor who wants to get into the CBD industry. But I think that's just really shady because that's just shady and strategic, very strategic. I mean, you got to hand it to them. That was a very smart move. Bad press is good press, right? Any press is good press, unless you're publicly traded. That is my number 1 bullshit article this week.
It's a good pickup to call out the bullshit on that one because you're right. I mean, it does seem a little nefarious to use Sanjay Gupta's name here and then put a very small disclaimer down eventually that says, by the way, this isn't the one that you're thinking of.
There was also a post on LinkedIn from Alan Brockstein, who runs New Cannabis Ventures, and he posted this article up in January 17th, 2016. And the article says, "Watch out for this, Sanjay Gupta," in quotes. And he said that back in 2016, one of his friends got an email from this guy who was like, "Dear so-and-so, would like to chat with you regarding MMJ. What is the best way to reach you? I can be reached at blah, blah, regards Sanjay." So to some people, it would be like, wow, really? Let me make sure that that's from Sanjay Gupta. This guy replied back to the doctor, "You've helped educate millions of people regarding the medical use of cannabis, and it warms my heart to see you benefit financially for all your good work." The Sanjay Gupta did not correct this guy. So he knows what he's doing. He's done this before in the past. So I think that also goes to show that this isn't some innocent, he knows what he's doing.
Okay, let's press on to the next one.
So my second news article bullshit of the week is that United Cannabis Corporation, who just did a patent lawsuit 2 weeks ago, they are now being sued by a company called H2 Partners, who is a distribution company with roots in the tobacco industry. And they had entered into a partnership earlier this year to grow 600 acres of industrial hemp in Colorado for the purposes of CBD production. According to the article in the Cannabis Business Times, it said things did not go well. Within a few weeks of entering into the joint venture with UCAN, the lawsuit states, it became clear to H2 that UCAN had no idea what it was doing and had never planted industrial hemp for CBD production. When the hemp seeds failed to germinate, UCAN foisted blame upon a hailstorm that struck Colorado. UCAN CEO Ernie Blackman reportedly texted H2 leadership and said that the field was a total loss. H2 furthermore asserts that the farmer selected by UCAN overplanted the fields and did not even understand that he needed to weed field planted with hemp seed for CBD production. H2 invested $650,000 into the operation, according to the suit. So they are seeking the original investment and lost profits, referencing total of at least $16 million. So that should be interesting to watch. Let's see how UCAN does when they have to pay for a lawsuit against somebody and a lawsuit for themselves. I'm calling bullshit on UCAN because here they are trying to flex their patents, on people. And it turns out that they're just another shady company who probably only has these patents to screw people. And now they're getting sued because they screwed people over, which I am not surprised that this company has screwed people over, because I feel like they're pulling a bitch move with their patent lawsuit in the first place.
This is a pretty good cautionary tale that falls in line with the whole idea behind this podcast is to people that are getting into the industry, do your homework.
Yes, do your freaking homework, man. Like, if you're not prepared to do your homework before you get started, you are going to be overwhelmed with homework once you get started. You don't want to do that. That is not recommended.
If you were going to give that one a BS rating, where are you at on this?
Well, so I think the bullshit is UCAN. I have a bad taste in my mouth because of them. So I'm going to give them, I don't know, I'm still going to give this a 3 on the bullshit meter because it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't blow my mind by any means. It's still bad, but I also think that we've only heard one side of it. So I think I need to read more before I can upgrade or downgrade that bullshit rating.
Sounds good. Somebody's certainly stepping in it, though.
Oh, yeah.
All right, let's move on to the next story of BS. What do you got?
The K2 overdoses in New Haven. Let me just clarify that they are not synthetic cannabinoids. They are just synthetic chemicals. I mean, maybe back in the day, there was some synthetic cannabinoids, or they were synthetic chemicals that mimicked cannabinoids. But this is not cannabis. This is not synthetic marijuana. It's like calling coffee crack. Like, they're not related to each other. Just because one is like, both of them might be an upper, that does not mean that they're in the same category. And I think that is such bullshit. Like, that's like a level 4 bullshit, because people keep equating. We're never going to get full acceptance of cannabis if these things continually are put together or related to each other.
Yeah, so it's probably a good time to actually talk a little bit about what is K2 in the first place. I'm looking at the article that you shared with me, and this is on CNN, and it is specifically stating that it is synthetic marijuana.
And I mean, is CNN woke? I don't think so. Like, CNN is still mainstream media. I don't expect any mainstream media to get these things right. That's why I made this podcast, because you're not going to get the truth. You're not going to hear the truth unless you're reading these industry-specific magazines or listening to industry-specific podcasts, unfortunately. But it is not synthetic marijuana. It is like oregano or some sort of spices or something. It's like some plant matter that they spray chemicals on. But often they change what these chemicals are because the government keeps making all these different chemicals illegal. So it is not synthetic marijuana. It is plant matter sprayed with synthetic chemicals. We don't even know what they are. Like, these aren't chemicals that you would ever use. These are like chemicals from like China, where these are made just to subvert the laws so that they're not illegal, because they're not anything, because they're new chemicals. And that's why we're only seeing these overdoses now, is because if every batch was like this, people would be dying all the time.
Yeah. What I'm reading here on just Wikipedia is that synthetic cannabinoids are a class of molecules that bind to cannabinoid receptors in the body, the same receptors to which THC and CBD attached. That doesn't make them cannabis. That makes them chemicals that bind to the same receptors that THC and CBD bind to.
Yes, but they're not. They're not cannabinoids.
Yeah, I'm just reading this, and it's like they're often labeled not for human consumption. Then what the fuck are they for?
They call it incense, generally, or bath salts.
Oh, and so they're aromatics.
No, that's what they call it to be sold, but you're supposed to smoke it.
This is some shady shit right here.
Yeah. I think that the bullshit here is that it keeps getting equated with marijuana, and it's not. So that's like level 4 bullshit. Like, it pisses me off, and it needs to stop. And it's something that continuously happens.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for another very informative segment on this week's bullshit. And stick around, everyone, because after the break is Kristen's interview with George Grafer of Kola Farms, and that's something you're not going to want to miss. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Cannabis Detector Podcast. We're working hard to create new episodes for you every week that are informative, relevant, and highlight the lowlights in the California cannabis industry. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your favorite podcatcher, and follow us on Instagram for additional updates and to get a peek behind the scenes as we bring you the news you might not want to hear, but need to.
Hello, thank you for joining me for another Cannabis Detector episode. This week, we are going to be talking with George Grafer of Kola Farms, spelled Kola. I found him on Instagram. He was posting about Calaveras County and the impending raids and letting people know they heard about raids happening or that it was time to harvest, pull your plants down, whatever, but the raids were inevitable, and that was very true. So I invited him to come on and speak about Calaveras and just the utter bullshit of Calaveras. I mean, for me personally in California, Calaveras County takes the cake for showing you just how volatile and risky investing in California right now really is. And just a little bit of a background on Calaveras County. In 2017, the county supervisors had a $3.6 million budget deficit. So they decided to open up permitting applications, the permitting application process for cultivators. They ended up receiving over 700 applications and accepting fees for every single application. In the end, 200 permits for commercial farms were granted, 300 were pending, 200 were denied or withdrawn. Let me see. By mid-2010, they had collected $7.5 million in Measure C cultivation taxes, with more revenue due from tax bills that went out in November. So the total 2-year haul, including permit fees and renewals to cover costs of cannabis regulation, policing, and code enforcement, approached $12 million. So Calaveras County made $12 million in 1 year, going from a budget deficit of $3.6 million to a budget surplus of $12 million. And what happens? 3 of the Board of Supervisors steps down, and 3 new come in, and 2 of the 3 were very staunch anti-cannabis people. And that would be Clapp and Mills. Their first names escape me right now. But anyway, Dennis Mills seems to be the most vocal of all of them. He goes out, and there's all kinds of news articles about him saying that he sees no difference between legal grows and illegal grows in Calaveras County. And in one of the articles, he shows a I think it was a pond that had been, or a creek that was diverted for illegal water usage for cultivation, which is the picture of an illegal grow, not a legal grow. To be a legal grow in California, you can literally ask any cultivator out there. You have to deal with almost 20 different regulating agencies. So there's no way that there's no difference between the two. Either you regulate it and they have to deal with state water boards and Department of Fish and Wildlife, Department of Pesticide Regulation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Or you don't regulate it and then no one deals with anything. And then all you have is a bunch of non-environmentally friendly grows. So that is literally the most obscene thing I've ever heard, to use the environment against legal grows. And then, not to mention, now that they have all this money, instead of going after the illegal grows, they're just going down the list, basically, of everyone who tried to do their part to play with the system, to play by the rules, who gave their banking information and their addresses and their partners' addresses and everything to the county. Those are the first people on the list to get raided with this $12 million. It defies logic. It blows my mind. I think that Calaveras County is the definition of bullshit in California, and I just feel that this is an incredibly important story. I mean, it's not even a story, it's an incredibly important thing that's happening that everyone should be aware of. That, yeah, there's a green rush, but is it a green rush into failure? That's the question. And a lot of people have lost a lot of money, and now, just like my first two episodes were about lawsuits, now Calaveras is wrapped up in quite a few lawsuits. So we'll see how it goes. But in the meantime, please enjoy my interview with George Grafer. Thanks. Let's start with, tell us about you. What has been your experience? When did you get started in Calaveras? How much did you start with money-wise? How much did it cost to get started?
Well, we bought property back in 2005 in Calaveras, so we've been up there for a while. Our operations didn't get started right away up there, but, we've spent probably now, over $1.3 million in just infrastructure alone, not taking into consideration the purchase of the property. And it's kind of tough because it's taken us the last 4 years to spend that amount of money to get the operations where they are. This was kind of our banner year. This is where we expected to be really recouping a lot of those, costs that we put into this operation. We've finished our expansion, and now, as we roll into 2018, we got faced with this ban. So all of the revenue that we expected to generate from Calaveras in 2018 just kind of went up in smoke.
And it's, so did Calaveras' revenue, right? They don't have a main industry. They have, before in the past, they had different industries. And just to let our listeners know, me and George did this interview already, and I accidentally fucked it up. So I'm speaking from experience having talked to you, but what were the other industries that were in Calaveras?
Well, we're in the gold country, so there used to be, the gold industry that was there. Then it turned into the timber industry, but Calaveras ran the timber industry out. Then there was this huge cement plant that was out there, and Calaveras ran the cement plant out. And, they've been shuttering these industries one after the other. And you have to realize Calaveras it's an area that has a small population for a county in California. The unemployment rate back in 2005 when I went into Calaveras was, probably twice the worst in any other county for California. And it wasn't really until the cannabis industry came in and started providing jobs and providing economic growth that you really start to see a major change out in Calaveras. And that major change over the last decade has brought a lot of the people in, retirees, people that are really trying to push the cannabis industry out. So they have no idea what it looked like 10, 15 years ago. Now, they're going to start seeing where Calaveras was, because we're already starting to see, there's unemployment increasing. A lot of the businesses are starting to struggle because they don't have the same people walking through. And, unfortunately, up in the hills, you have a lot of meth shops that were closed down because of all of the cannabis industry, or all of the cannabis companies that were coming in. And you're going to start seeing them open up again.
It doesn't make sense that, well, okay, so looking back at the previous industries that they had, was the reason that they shut them down or pushed them out, was it environmental? Is that what Calaveras is, their main beef with any industry that comes in? Because I see that Dennis Mills is touting the environment with this. And I could see with cement, possibly, that's an environmental thing, and mining could be an environmental thing, but what is their problem with making money in Calaveras County?
That's a good question, because in each one of these instances, in the previous industries and the cannabis industries, there's a happy medium to be found. And the problem is you have some people that are willing to take the time and put in the effort to make sure that they figure out where that happy medium is. And then you have other people that just, the quick and dirty answer is, no, let's just shut it down and get it out of my face. You have Dennis Mills, who's a retiree. You've got Clyde Clapp, who's a retiree, and they're really trying to represent that vote. They're the ones that are really pushing behind this anti-cannabis campaign. As you know, Dennis Mills is someone that we just went through a recall effort. We missed by 93 votes, but it was quite obvious, cannabis is a real hot topic in Calaveras County. And it was quite obvious to him that, the people in his district were more than willing to get him out based on his lack of understanding how to figure out where that happy medium is in cannabis and where we should be going as a county. So now he's kind of changed his tune a little bit and saying, well, maybe we should put it to a vote of the people. He knows that we're getting ready to start another recall campaign against him. He knows that the voters in his district are more than willing to go against him. It's just a matter of time before I think we get an ordinance in Calaveras County that makes sense. So we have Clyde Clapp, who's up for re-election in November. He's anti-cannabis. And then we have Mike Oliveira, who is up for re-election. He's been somewhat kind of pro-cannabis, but recently he's been talking about maybe putting it to a vote of the people. I honestly believe after the November elections, we will wind up having a vote that's going to make sense. The ordinance will probably go into place in 2019, and we will get something that, resembles a fair shake. Unfortunately, a lot of our community was built in rural residential, and a lot of those people are not going to be able to do that. They're going to wind up moving into ag areas, which, quite honestly, I think makes more sense than having a 5-acre property with a 1-acre grow on it in a residential neighborhood.
Oh, for sure. I mean, that's how you build up divisiveness in neighborhoods. But I'm wondering, these guys had to have gotten elected in the first place, right? So what did they run on to get elected to replace the board members that stepped down?
Well, Clyde Clapp just recently came in from a recall that was done on a previous supervisor. So that previous supervisor happened to be recalled. Clapp ran against him with the promise to shut down, this other situation where there was a cement plant that was, trying to operate and get some special contracts. The previous supervisor supposedly provided those contracts. So there was a very political, outcry from the community over there. And, a lot of people were calling for corruption. I can't tell you anything other than, previous supervisor who seemed to be, Kearney was a really nice guy. He just happened to be caught up in a situation that I think he couldn't avoid any longer. So clap happened to be put in by virtue of that recall, and that's why he's up for re-election right away.
Oh, so a recall means that the opponent gets the place automatically. They don't get elected in, they win. Basically.
Well, they do get elected in. So in a recall, there's a few people that'll throw their names in the hat. The amount of votes, the way that they actually handle a recall is very different than if you just get naturally elected in. So, for instance, on a recall, let's just say Kearney had 30% of the vote and Clapp only had 25% of the vote. Even though Clapp has a smaller number, because there was a recall in effect, it's assumed that all of the other people that voted for the other officials, would have voted for Clapp, and so he automatically goes in.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, I wonder what Dennis Mills was campaigning on. Okay, I read somewhere in the news that said that Calaveras County, the majority of people voted against Prop 64. You and I know that Prop 64 was bullshit. So, if Calaveras has a lot of cultivators and cannabis people, they're not going to default vote for Prop 64 if they actually read it and understood it. But I've seen Dennis Mills try and use that, saying, hey, our county resoundingly denied Prop 64. They didn't want cannabis here. But that's not the right interpretation. So it's just one more thing that he's doing. And my question always is, follow the money. Like, don't these supervisors, they're getting paid by the tax money, right? They do get paid for their job.
Yeah, and I should probably point out that we have, Jack Garamendi, who represents our district, which is District 2. He's a phenomenal supervisor. He has done a lot of good things for the county. He grew up in that county. He's been there. His family is well known in that county. Whereas you have some of these other people that are retirees, Dennis Mills, Clapp, they're just, they've come into the county and they've actually had a couple years behind themselves in the county, which have led them to be able to get into these positions. So I think they're a poor representation of people in the county, whereas, again, Jack has been there for years, forever, and his family is very, very well known. So he does a great job. So I don't want to lump all the supervisors together, but I would say that, from where we sit, Dennis Mills and Clyde Clapp, need to be replaced. They have their own interests in mind, and they definitely don't have the majority interest of the county. And when the county voted on Prop 64, you're right, there are a lot of cultivators that were against Prop 64. And there was a very narrow margin. It was, I think 52-48. So there wasn't a landslide of people going against Prop 64. And the more people you talk to in our county, the more people are starting to realize, you know what, this is an industry that we need. We need to figure it out, and we need to get it out of rural residential. It comes out of rural residential, and I think you have over 60% of the people, the population in Calaveras voting for it.
What is Mills' prerogative? I mean, obviously you're not him, but what is inspiring him? Like, what is he pushing for? Because if you get rid of cannabis, what industry is there to support the infrastructure of Calaveras County?
He's falsely advertising that the tourism industry is something that we can start depending on. And it's completely untrue. Although there is tourism in Calaveras, it's never going to be anywhere near what we need to supplement something like the cannabis industry.
I had read that there's the Calaveras Cannabis Association, or Alliance, and they're an advocacy group for the local industry, and they offered to replace the on-campus cop at Bret Harte High School and to pay $60,000 for his salary, and they declined, saying that was drug money. And it seems to really just buck in the face of logic, and it's like, okay, well, we would rather our kids be unsafe than have you try and support our county. Like, oh no, please don't improve our county. Like, what is that? Like, what is the justification besides, oh, that's drug money?
And that's the only justification. They're saying that, there's an issue that, when if they were to take that money, then federally they could put themselves in a bind for other grants and things of that nature, which, is complete bullshit. They don't want, and it's, again, specifically Mills and Clapp, at any juncture that they have an opportunity to roadblock us, they do. And so, when we go out and we say, hey, listen, we want to do a charity event, or we want to raise money for this or that, they will do whatever they can to prevent that from happening.
But it's funny because obviously Mills and Clapp wasn't a part of the permitting process, but no one had a problem taking in almost $12 million from cannabis taxes and fees. That wasn't drug money. But when, it's an outward cannabis alliance trying to make good effort to the neighborhood, then that's drug money. That is just, it blows my mind. What are you thinking? So, okay, that's the other thing. If you don't regulate your industry, you have an unregulated industry. How could that possibly be a better option for the environment? And why would you go out there and attack the legal people, the people that up until now, especially now, do not trust the authorities, have not had the best relationships with legal enforcement, and here these people take a risk. They make an investment into where they're at, and they put their lives on the line, literally giving their bank account information. Anyone who has any stake in these companies, putting it all on paper as a show of, hey, we want to be legal, like we want this opportunity, and then, to just have everything taken from them. I hear you're saying next year you plan on opening back up in Calaveras, but how could anyone possibly trust being in Calaveras ever again?
It's a great question, and, quite honestly, like, if I hadn't built everything out there that's already in place, I certainly wouldn't be moving into Calaveras.
Do you know of other people that are just biding their time, hoping to God that next year Mills and Clapp is out and they can continue? Or
I do, but the majority of our industry is already left. Those people that didn't have a big stake, they didn't purchase their properties, they didn't put the infrastructure in that may have cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those people are gone. And I can tell you there's even some of the big players that were in Calaveras, and they made a conscious decision in the beginning of this year to get up and move, because they knew even if we were to get something in place in 2019, to lose 2018 could be so detrimental to their business that it didn't make sense.
Do you know, are the people that are getting raided, the legal grows that are getting raided, are people actually going to jail, or are they just getting raided and losing everything?
The majority of them are getting raided and losing everything, but some of them are. There's been a few instances for varying reasons that they've been arrested. And, I can tell you that they're certainly concerned about what's happening, because even though the attorneys are, allowing them to believe that there's, very little that the county can do, I'd be concerned, right? If you're, going into an industry and you're trying to comply with everything and get your state licensing, and then you have something like this that, pops up, what are the chances of you getting your state licensing?
It seems like common sense to anyone that understands economics that it costs money to put people in jail. Every single body in jail costs money. Every raid that happens costs money. And I remember in our previous interview, you were saying that there is a lawsuit. There's a class action lawsuit against Calaveras, correct?
Yeah, so we've filed 3 different lawsuits. So we have the takings lawsuit, which is for damages, the losses that we're incurring in 2018. Really, the purpose of that lawsuit is just a bargaining chip against getting a new ordinance, although after the primary elections, we've kind of realized that we're probably in a good place with having Clapp replaced and one of the other supervisors and getting the votes that we need for an ordinance in 2019. There's another lawsuit that was just recently filed, which we're waiting for the certification for class action status, but the lawsuit is to recoup our registration and taxes from 2017. And then there's another lawsuit for CEQA violations, which was just dismissed, go imagine, from one of the judges in Calaveras County.
So, okay, we'll explain that. Okay, first of all, CEQA is the California Environmental Quality Act. So what was that lawsuit about? Why did that get denied?
Well, the lawsuit's about the process in which there were multiple CEQA violations. As you know, CEQA requires very stringent guidelines when you're making countywide decisions. And so there were violations of CEQA when they put the ban in effect. Now, we've gone through this process with the county to try and stop them from having the ban in effect. And really, CEQA was, in our eyes, an opportunity for the higher courts to put an injunction in place to prevent the ban from going into effect. That never occurred. And we can still follow the CEQA lawsuit, but in all honesty, after the primary elections, we've decided to really push our money into the takings lawsuits and also the recovery of our registration and taxes from 2017. So, we have a limited supply of funds that we can really move into the attorney's hands. So CEQA has taken a backseat, and we're probably not going to pursue that any further. But we will start really working and putting the full court press on our takings lawsuit and the lawsuit for the registration and taxes.
So I just released an episode about, I got a little excited. I got to tell you about class action lawsuits because I'm like, oh my God, I know so many bad companies that I could just take their product to a lab and be like, wow, they're lying about everything. But I thought it was my misconception that if you do a class action lawsuit, the class does not pay. The lawyers only get paid when they win. But you're saying that, not only did you guys get fucked completely after putting an investment into this place, after giving the fees, paying the taxes, now you all have to pay a lawyer to win this as well.
Yeah, so on the takings lawsuit, which is a bit more challenging because we already know on the takings lawsuit, we're not going to be receiving any money back. There's no way that the county could afford to pay on the takings. So the only thing that would happen in that instance is the county would go bankrupt.
And so who benefits from, I get it, bro, fuck them, but who actually benefits if the county goes bankrupt?
Nobody really benefits. And so we, again, are using that as a bargaining chip and to push them into an ordinance. I think we probably won't even need it. In all honesty, we're going to wind up getting to November, and before we even have a chance to get into a courtroom on the takings lawsuit, we will probably wind up having a Board of Supervisors that we know will be in place. Now, in the event that doesn't happen, we will continue, down this path with the takings lawsuit and be able to use that as a bargaining chip for an ordinance in 2019.
How much is it costing? How do you know how big the class is in the lawsuit, and how much is it costing all of you individually to pay for this lawsuit?
So we have 94 members to date in the takings lawsuit. The other lawsuit, which is for the registration fees and taxes, has yet to be certified as class action. So that will be, determined at some point in time. And I'm sure that there's going to be a larger group of people that try and participate in that. That lawsuit in particular is going to be able to recover whatever is left in the county that was used for taxes and registration. So right now, I think the number is $8.3 million that's still sitting within the county from the taxes that we paid and from the registration fees. So, it represents a little bit more than half of the money that's available. So if, for instance, in our situation, we paid $250,000 in taxes last year, I'd be happy to get half of that back. That particular suit has a lot of legs, only because the way and the manner in which the county collected the taxes and registration fees was completely illegal. So the Measure C ballot that was put in place to collect registration and taxes specifically outlines that as something that is only going to be for those that are approved for state licensing. None of us were approved for state licensing at the time, so therefore they should never have been collecting those fees.
That's such a common problem with these cities and counties is they're like, hey, application fees, non-refundable, but please apply. We'll take your money. Don't even worry about it. We'll probably deny you because we've already chosen who we're going to license, but hey, everyone, please come give us your money and apply, and that way we have your information in case you decide to operate without a license or we decide to turn around and raid you because new people have joined the Board of Supervisors. But I recall in our previous conversation, you were saying that in your speculation, the county is trying to spend the money they made from all of you by raiding all of you so that you don't have any money to recover. So what if you won the lawsuit and they've spent all the money? Do they still owe you guys? What if they don't have any money by the time you win a lawsuit?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, I think, there is some insurance that the county has, so we would be able to collect from there. But, I personally, I don't have any interest in bankrupting the county. That's not my prerogative. My prerogative is to try and get a fair shake. And, Calaveras has been perpetually plagued with problems, for decades, if not, the last century. And, this would only compound that issue. So there's no benefit in bankrupting the county.
It's definitely not you guys bankrupting the county. It's the county bankrupting the county because the county keeps shutting down the industries. Yeah.
There's other opportunities outside of just monetary benefits that I think, we could employ, again, and use as bargaining opportunities to get an ordinance in place. There's been discussions, and I can't really say exactly what we're looking for because it kind of goes against, our efforts by kind of letting the cat out of the bag at this moment. But I would say that you're going to wind up seeing, a lot of people in Calaveras, and, they'll put pressures on the supervisors. They'll put pressures on, other members, the sheriff and other people in the county to make sure that if push comes to shove, and there is the possibility of the county going bankrupt, that these people will be put on notice that their jobs are in jeopardy.
And by these people, are you referring to the Board of Supervisors or the cannabis people?
The supervisors and the sheriff, these people that are in the position to do something about it. It's really, the Board of Supervisors right now are the ones that hold the key. But there's other, members of the community, the sheriff being one of them, that, he can, either help the members of the cannabis community or go against them.
So tell me, how is the sheriff? Is he anti-cannabis, or is he like, hey, bro, I need to get paid. My police force needs to get paid. So let's just work with these people.
I think, he's got a lot of self-serving interest. I think he follows the majority at the time. So if the Board of Supervisors is ruled by anti-cannabis, he's going anti-cannabis. If it's pro-cannabis, he goes pro-cannabis.
But does he realize that going anti-cannabis means that there's no... It just, to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're anti-cannabis, you spend all your money from cannabis raiding legal cannabis farms, then you don't have that money anymore. Then any raid, any arrest, any person in jail is going to take away from your own salary to the point where you don't have a major industry. And how do these guys expect to get paid if they're shutting down the people that were paying for them?
Yeah, no, and he knows that. He definitely knows that. He's somewhat nearsighted, and right now the coffers are full. So they're paying extra money, they're buying new equipment,
using up the money before you guys get it back.
They're looking at purchasing, a Bearcat, which is an $800,000 armored vehicle, and try to find major purchases that they can burn through that money very quickly.
So a Bearcat, those are one of those digger thingies, right? Are they literally buying a digger thing to go in and destroy people's farms?
It's an armored vehicle, so it looks almost like a tank without the nozzle coming out of the front of it.
Wow, a tank, really?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, because you guys have so much warfare going on up there to justify almost $1 million tank.
And, they're renting helicopters and the plethora of things that they're doing, and it's all focused on legal or previous legal grows, right? So, right now everyone's under the guise of illegal because there's a ban in place. But really, you know what? Everyone should be shut down at this point. Majority of them have, I think there's plenty of illegal grows that have been up there for years and everyone knows where they are that need to really come into compliance. So those are the places that are doing damage to the environment. Those are the places where you find, a lot of drug activity going on well beyond cannabis cultivation, right? So you're going to wind up seeing very little effort on them because right now, the previous legal grows that paid the taxes, they're the ones that are the low-hanging fruit.
And when you say come into compliance, that would mean that there is an actual legal route to take, which there is not currently. So no one's going to come into compliance. Why would you come into compliance? Look what happened to people that came into compliance. They're getting raided.
Yeah.
Just blows my mind. I'm literally oh my God, I feel for you guys so much up there because what do you have to say to investors that see California as this green rush, oh my God, let's build 100,000 square foot cultivation in this county or that county? What do you have to say to those investors?
I think in our industry, it's paramount for any operation to have a CUP. If you have the conditional use permit, you're halfway there. If you can get a development agreement in addition to that, that grandfathers you in against any ban or any type of retaliation the community might take or Board of Supervisors, right? So, and that's what we look for, in any new operations that we're opening up. We're looking for a conditional use permit and a development agreement. And the two of those paired together puts you in kind of an ironclad contract.
That would mean that the county actually allows for that, though, right? Because they would have to give those CUPs.
So, for instance, in our Sonoma operations, we've applied for our conditional use permit. In Rio Vista, we have a conditional use permit and a development agreement. And if Calaveras does come back online in 2019, we are certainly going to be pushing for a conditional use permit and development agreement that is required in the process.
Wow. I really hope that Clapham Mills gets recalled, and I hope that there are better people out there. Are there other options that are get these guys out of here, I want to take their job?
Yeah, and, that's why I was referring to the primary elections. We have Ben Stopper, who is winning against Clapp right now. And so Ben Stopper has already kind of given us a rough idea of what he expects for an ordinance. And we're more than happy to accept that. We have Jack, who's already in place. And so Jack Garamendi is going to be the person, I think, that really guides everyone through this cannabis ordinance that we'll see in 2019, or hopefully see. And then, we currently have Mike Olivera, who's on the Board of Supervisors. He's running against Marita Callaway. The two of them, are both pro-cannabis. So 3 out of the 2 votes, or 3 out of the 5 votes, are all we need at that point.
Yeah. Well, I hope to God that logic prevails in this situation, because it doesn't make sense that they get rid of the cannabis industry when there literally is no other industry there to support their taxes, to support the local government, to support the police force. Nor is it going to help anybody that's set up there that has lost all their money, and now they can't find an actual job because there were never jobs in the first place. So you're saying November, the primary elections, that's going to be the tell-all.
Yeah, and, it's tough. It's really tough in Calaveras right now. There's a lot of families that were depending on this industry. There's a lot of people that have been put out of work, and as a community, we're trying to chip in to help each other, but, some people can only hold out for so long.
Exactly. Where do you get the money from when you just got raided, or you invested everything you had into your property that is no longer legal?
And that's, a lot of people are at that point where they invested everything that they were making back into the business. Just like most businesses, when they're starting off in their infancy, you're trying to put as much capital back into the business to grow it and, get it to a successful standpoint. Well, those people put their money back in. This was the year for a lot of people. This is the year that a lot of people were looking at and saying, okay, you know what, we're going to wind up getting a good return on our investment. And now they're getting nothing. And, they're afraid to try and get rid of it at a fire sale. We're trying to help as many people as possible, but it's a complete tragedy. I think, it's a bait and switch. There's no reason there should be a ban in place. There was a very simple solution put on the table, and Clyde Clapp and Dennis Mills made a big effort to make sure that was abolished, right? So they, without a doubt, 100% responsible for this personally.
I really hope that they get their karma for screwing a lot of people out of their livelihoods that wanted to play legally, that wanted to actually work with the state. I really hope so. And I hope that the ordinance that you guys have coming up in November protects people from crazy Board of Supervisors that could come in and fuck everything up again.
Yeah. Well, I think we will.
Okay, good. That's good. Well, on that note, I have a way of ending things on a negative note, but this is not a positive podcast. No one comes here to get motivated, and if you are, wow, that's crazy. But thank you so much for coming on, and I want to check back in with you to make sure that, you're making it. I know you're in different places. You had to move, but I'm also interested to see after November if Calaveras gets their logic together and gets their crazy people out of there. And if there's anything I can do, I will definitely do it.
Well, thank you, Kristen. We appreciate it, and thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
The Cannabis Detector is produced by Soil to the Oil Media.